Hello, this is Dale Matthews. I'm joined by Mike Jones, and yesterday was First Friday. What is today, Mike?
It's the first Saturday of the month.
Okay. Whoa, that's cause
Yes,
for celebration.
and I'm sure. What do you have some obscure holiday or something that today
No,
is?
I'm just impressed by the fact that I always say something new at the beginning of every show.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, yeah. So, Mike went out yesterday on First Friday and talked to a bunch of people.
Hmm.
Uh, Asking them the same question over and over again. And what was that question? It was the question, do you recognize me? I'm Mike Jones.
Yes, right. And I came back with a deflated ego. Uh, no, it was. How do you feel about concealed carry on college campuses?
Right.
And being that we're so fresh in the minds of everybody is the shooting that took place on the Umpqua Community College campus that there was no shortage of opinions. Some people would say, I don't want to talk on camera, blah, 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 blah. And they go on and on and on for like 5 minutes. After the first few people did that, I said, hold that right there. And, just forced them to, be on camera.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Now, those of you who've watched this show in the past, at least once, probably realize it's a show about politics. Yeah, local politics. Okay, so we talk with local people about issues that may be tied in with local places. And one of the places that could be affected by this would be Rogue Community College.
Absolutely.
A couple,
And whether or not you're living tomorrow or your children are living tomorrow, I would imagine is pretty important to you.
right. So I have a regular feature every Monday morning on Bill Meyer's show on KMED. And of course, that's what other news media is all they could talk about. I mean, we even dedicated an evening to it, but we
They
tried to.
were all talking about Dale's appearance on Bill Meyer's show.
They can't talk
Yes.
about the way I looked, but okay. All right. So, because it's radio. Uh,
Yes.
so what I did was bring to the table some interest that may generate there on the RCC campus that's in Rogue Community College campus that's in Jackson County and the one that's here in Josephine County. What are the rules about protecting yourself as an adult on their campus? Now, before I forget, I want to mention something to you that I think is pretty important. Rogue Community College has their own safety committee, and it meets once a month.
Mm-hmm.
And their last meeting was September 16th
Oh,
at
wow.
3 o'clock. That's on a Wednesday. Now, their next meeting, you may want to write this down because I intend to go there. Mike may get a chance to go, and I'm going to ask them, being a public body, will they allow us to videotape this meeting? Because I'd be real interested to see what they have to say on, write this down, October 21st at 3 p.m. at the RCC campus. Now, it's apparently happening simultaneously on three campuses. I can really only think of one way that that's possible.
Yeah, they would have to video conference that if they're all doing it together or, teleconference.
That's right. That's right. So I'd like to be there and find out what they're going to have to say. Because at their last safety meeting, they were talking about things like about how it may be unsafe to smoke on campus and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how and I looked back into the records in the past, and there have been some times they've talked about perhaps having an armed guard on campus. But, that's pretty expensive. And so they decided that that wouldn't be necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe not even desirable. The minutes are not quite that detailed. So I'm real interested in what they have to say about all this. Now, there is a political component to this. This is a show about politics. What else do you expect? So there were a lot of people who complained that the president of the United States, well, certainly not our governor, and no mayors anyplace, and not anybody else, and no presidential candidates, but only the president really made any kind of politics about this. Yeah, okay. So I also introduced that idea on the Bill Maher show and talked a little bit about what does that mean and what should we really expect? And here's that little bit of a clip.
Now, the RCC campus in Grants Pass.
Yes.
Does it have armed security guards?
No.
Do they have security guards at all?
Yes, they're unarmed.
They're unarmed, just like Umpqua Community College.
They would use harsh language.
So, I know once again, we're being told not to try to politicize this, but is this clear thinking about what could be a clear and present danger for students?
Obviously not. Obviously not. And speaking of politicization, let me just say something about the president and the speech that he gave.
Okay.
Nobody was surprised by the president's speech. Mm-hmm. This fellow is not going to change his position. He's going to stick to that position and repeat it at every opportunity. But here's something that, and probably nobody will like me saying this, but here's something that's true, in my opinion. He always sticks to that position. Oh, yes, he's waffled on some things, but on this position, he's been crystal clear from day one through today. Mm-hmm. Now, if only we had that kind of sticking to the party line in any other party. Because, I mean, you've even heard what Donald Trump was talking about, about health care the other day. Donald, what are you doing, bud? We have people here who I've never seen anything like it, who are supposed to be conservatives, fiscal conservatives, Republicans. They're part of the party, and they're talking about raising taxes at every possible opportunity. What kind of Republican says that?
It's like you're a fiscal conservative until it's time to pass out more money for public services, Dale. I mean,
I've said it many times that at a football game, I can appreciate the fact there are two goalposts. I know there's some people, there shouldn't be any goals at all.
No. There aren't really. Well, in politics, though, the goalposts are very fuzzy, except for the team on the blue side of things. They seem to be very clear about the
clear. And nobody's expecting he's suddenly going to say, "Oh, I've seen the light and I'm going to change." No. Mm-hmm. He said this is what. But
yeah, in fact, I would even think that President Obama was being absolutely consistent with his position, were he to fire the Secret Service and disarm all the guards around the White House. I think I'd be
exactly right.
Yeah.
Now, so for those who say, well, they expect it. Yeah, well, you can, even if I don't agree with him, and I don't agree with almost everything he said, he is being consistent on this issue.
Absolutely.
And I would invite people to pick somebody that's been consistent with the Republican Party values. Pick them in Jackson County, Josephine County, anywhere you wish, and say, wait a minute, why is your picture on the wall of Republican headquarters when you vote for every tax increase that comes along?
It's a reasonable question there, Dale. Dale Matthews, badcounty.com. Before we take off here, Dale, back to your coverage, though, of people at RCC.
Yes, sir.
Is anybody from RCC willing to come on and discuss this matter of why they insist on unarmed security? Given the fact that unarmed security would be very ineffective, God forbid, were something like this to come to the Rogue Valley.
Well, I think we could probably get at least one student to come on, but can you imagine an administration person that would be allowed to come on the radio and tell you what their official policy is and try to explain it to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
No, they're not going to do that.
Might be a good time, perhaps, for citizens here in Southern Oregon who have children or young adults or even older adults to go to RCC. It's not just kids to go to RCC or young adults. You might just want to ask them, how is this working for you? Does this make a lot of sense, given, even if you don't like concealed carry by people, which is perfectly legal, although it violates your state university policies and such, at the very least, you wouldn't want any security people being able to fight back either?
Leave your protection behind?
Yeah, really.
I would imagine that everybody there was grateful that somebody came in with a weapon.
Yeah. Darn well that's what happened. Appreciate the take, and of course, you'll be continuing to cover this and the other live news in Joe County tonight, 7 o'clock, right?
That's correct. every night.
All right, very good. Dale Matthews, we appreciate your take over there at badcounty.com. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Be well. 653 at FM 1067. KMED, you're on the Bill Myers Show.
Okay, Mike. So, what did people out on the street have to say on First Friday?
Well, actually, that was pretty good. That was a pretty good interview there. And a couple things that I have learned before we get to the street stuff is that in doing a little bit of research, apparently your right to carry, your right to use your concealed handgun license and concealed carry supersedes the policy at the community colleges. And so they have a policy, they have a rule, but apparently if it came down to a legal challenge, they would lose. And
there's a policy. I mean, there's a universal rule that you can chew gum and walk. You can eat in various places. But if you chew gum, probably in a classroom at RCC, or eat, they could expel you.
Yes. Okay. But I would assume that if you're doing it correctly, concealed carry means that you're carrying concealed.
I thought you meant chewing gum correctly. Okay.
Yeah, which means they're not going to know that you're carrying concealed until an event where it became necessary for you to draw your weapon. And if that were the case, you would not care about being expelled from RCC.
Yeah, and I think everybody would be grateful. And then they would be really in a fix. Do they both congratulate you and expel you?
Yes, this would be a very tricky thing. The media would have conflicts with this, and the administration at the school system would have a problem with it too. That would be a very interesting thing to see. I'd like to see, I'm not suggesting that I'd like to see any events happen, but at some point in the future, I would like to see a legally armed citizen intercede on behalf of his fellow men and women at in a normally gun-free zone. But listen, if they wanted to protect people, they would say, hey, listen, we have this policy. We don't want you to take your guns on campus, but you know what? It is your right to bring them on. And so, there's nothing we can do about it. That would at least put the message out to people who are considering something that, you know what? Considering the proximity in time to the most recent shooting, there's likely to be some more guns pointed at me if I try doing that on one of those campuses. Makes sense.
Well, okay, one more thing about politics. This is a show about politics, okay? I'm surprised that I'm not surprised that the Democratic Party headquarters in Josephine County, is there one? I'm not surprised that they lag behind on making statements. I am surprised that the more politically active side of the aisle, that be the Republican committee headquarters, that they don't make more announcements about things. It took them forever about the sales tax just recently, forever to get there.
Right.
Wouldn't this be appropriate time for people who believe strongly in the Second Amendment, to the exclusion of a lot of other things, that they would step forward as a party and say, you know what, here's what we think is right. And thank you very much for telling us about that meeting on Wednesday, the 21st. We're going to take our entire Central Committee to that meeting.
Yeah, that's right.
And wouldn't it be refreshing if you heard the Democrats say anything about anything except to each other and say, well, here's how we feel. And even if they're on the other side, at least they've stated their opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be fine. I think the problem here is that we're too apologetic. I just think there's an issue with. I don't know that a lot of concealed carry holders are involved in mass shootings or involved in shootings, period. So I just think that, we ought to look at the statistics. I think that there's room for a case study here. Let's say that we pick this college system. We're going to be okay with guns here. We want you to be properly certified. And listen, we'll even have a course on campus that you can take free of charge to make sure that you're properly certified and that you're competent with your weapon and all of that. I think that
just announcing that would be enough to keep you immune from shooters forever.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you're a liberal, you probably can't do that. You just can't make yourself do that. So that's going to be a difficult hoop to jump through.
One more thing about politics. Thank you for allowing me to speak about politics on a political show.
Oh, and here, before you do that, let me just say the president said, I'm going to be accused of politicizing this. Anytime anybody talks publicly about the Second Amendment or weapons or guns or gun control, that's all politicized. It all is. It's all politics.
Absolutely.
Anyway,
well, wouldn't it be refreshing if we had county commissioners, city council, that would come forward and make about this big issue that happened here relatively locally, if they were to come forward and say, we want to reaffirm to everybody that we have a charter, that we have certain things that we follow, that we have an opinion, but why is it, and this includes, sorry to some friends on both sides of this, that includes the political party headquarters recently. Okay, well, we're not sure that we want to alienate, and just shut up, okay? Well, or no, the opposite. Would you speak out, please? And be brave. Why is it that the citizens are leading the way at all times? Well, we don't know if we want to say anything about mineral withdrawals. We have to do all the talking, and then you're going to try to be our leaders from behind? Try stepping out into the spotlight every once in a while. We do it every week. And have some backbone and stand up and tell people, who's going to shout you down on this issue? And tell us what you think. Stop trying to lead from, behind the curtain and around the corner. If you look over your shoulder and nobody's following you, you're not a leader.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good point. So anyway, we went out and true to the topic that we're on here, we went out and we asked people, how do you feel about concealed carry on college campuses? And so we're going to run 3 segments here that are about 3 minutes apiece, and then we'll have a little break to discuss it in between. How would you feel about concealed carry for students and teachers on college campuses?
I think it's a mistake. The more guns out there, the more violence is going to be taking place. Too many places are overwhelmed with guns. As the president said, we have one for every human in the country. How many more do you need? I don't feel insecure about needing to carry a weapon. I think if we get control over the mental health issues in the country and some of the disgruntled politics, I think we'll eliminate some of this violence. We're one of the only violent countries in the world outside of the war. So that's just my opinion. I think we ought to just fix this. And there's only one way to fix it. Everybody just relax, take a deep breath, and get a hug.
That's necessary. Everybody that is willing to stand up and be a sheepdog for the sheep that can't protect themselves ought to. They should. I think that it's very important that we be able to defend ourselves. If just one person had a concealed weapon permit, maybe had a weapon on them there, they may have saved lives.
I actually agree with it. I believe that in the right hands, the right people may have prevented some of the students from being killed or faculty. That's just my personal take on it. But yeah, I think the right people with the concealed carry, I think could have avoided some of the death toll. Obviously, somebody comes in shooting, it's going to take a second, but yeah, I agree. The problem isn't the people that have the guns; it's the the people that have the emotional problems that are getting their hands on guns that are doing this. I think it's more of a psychological problem than anything else.
I was at the coast driving down 101, and I heard about it about 2 hours after it happened because we were out of radio range. I heard about it. I got goosebumps, and I just got real upset about it. Got to thinking, well, what can you do? Carrying, you're safer, but yeah, it's a spooky thing. It really is. You have to go through all kinds of checks to get that, to get your concealed carry. I don't have a problem with having the same thing go for getting a gun. I just don't have a problem with it. There's no big deal about waiting a few days for universal coverage. Find out about the guy's a nut. He didn't get a gun that way. He'll get a gun a different way. It could have made a difference. But then they could have all been terrorists too. You know, that's what Trump says. We're sending them all back. They could all be terrorists.
Yeah. It's just entertaining. It was entertaining. And you know, listen, to what degree alcohol is involved in any of this, I have no idea. This particular interview took place outside the Laughing Clam, and so you know,
yeah.
But a variety of opinions.
Okay, and people are certainly entitled to their opinion, and with varying degrees of, you know, okay.
No, Del, tell us.
Varying degrees of mental defense against yeah, right. So,
well, you know what? Listen, some people are up on the news and they're hip to the scene, and others are just, pulling off of their personal lexicon there. So,
right. Well, and most people are going to have an immediate reaction to this that's obviously based on emotions.
Right.
Some people, I think Mike and I included, are a little bit more likely. Sure, we get upset about things, and we, not human not to be, but then it's, well, what do you do about this? What are possible solutions about this? Now, we cover and look at social media also, and on some sites, that's mostly about the politics. For example, Josephine County Politics site, it's mostly people talking about pluses and minuses of what can be done. On some of the other sites, local people here are posting hearts and flowers and, oh, it touched me personally. How is it touching you personally? Well, if I see even a runaway dog in New Jersey, it makes you feel what?
Well, and listen, I got to tell you something. It was odd when we were talking to people last night. You could see that some of these people were living it as they're talking to you about it, and they got emotional. And you could see it in their eyes, you could hear it in their voice, and you could tell that when our eyes were darting, they were visualizing this whole thing as they're talking about it. One girl on here, you can tell that it seemed pretty obvious to me about it, but yeah, it's interesting. This is an emotional issue, because people get killed, and then you have to deal with the aftermath of that with all the relatives and friends that are mourning the loss of these people. So I understand the emotional aspect of it. I think it is that there's a little drama added for Facebook effect. No question.
Okay, so maybe I'm an awful person, but I don't understand. I would understand how someone that lives close to Umpqua, someone that lives in Roseburg, would want to know the list of names. Of course I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But what I don't understand is how people here locally, unless they've got a tie in with Roseburg, why do they want to see the list of names? What does that do for them?
Yeah, I don't know. Although, in fairness, we are only an hour away from that. It's not. It isn't outside the realm of possibility that somebody here knows somebody going to school in Roseburg.
But you see this same kind of thing where somebody would want to see the list of names of, and it's a very emotional issue also, you don't need to send me an email, the 9/11 victims. Well, let's see a list of names of the 9/11 victims.
Oh, they read
Really?
their names every year at the ceremony.
I understand. It's just that why would somebody, what is it about a list of names that makes people feel sad? It's names. I mean, yes, they're linked to human beings. I know all that, but
Yes.
what do you? Oh,
And see, you have no link to human beings, so that's
no. It's like this
understandable that you have a disconnect there.
It's very much, to me. It's very much like the lost dog syndrome. I mean, there's whole websites dedicated to lost dogs all over the world. Okay, really? Well, what was it? His name was Sparky. Oh, it's nice to know his name. How is it helpful to know the dog's name?
Well, listen, this is a great point because
it's a slave name anyway.
Oh, geez. There's a disconnect that takes place because human issues might generate 5 or 10 people showing up. You threaten the animal shelter or something like that, you get half the town showing up.
Oh yeah.
It's an amazing phenomenon. So, I mean, if we could just recruit some of those animal people, how could we do that? Somehow get them to identify with being a human.
No, we know from the webinar, the video seminar that they had 2 levees ago, that they were giving an advice from up north where they have finally, according to them, passed levees. Here's some advice for you. Tie the levee in with children and safety. And they did it like it was the next day. Whoa, oh, by the way, there's children and there's safety. No, there isn't. But the patrols, why, we could put somebody in the school. They followed their instructions to the letter. Still didn't do any good. But I mean, it's this emotional. Of course you're emotional. No, of course. I'm just saying, look, after the emotion, now can we be just a little odd? I mean, I did encourage you to go to this thing on Wednesday, the 21st, so that you can see for yourself, and so you can talk to RCC about what they're going to do to keep local students safe, and what's your policy about this?
Well, right, and this is a great point because now this thing has to be looked at with a clear head and pure analysis, because nothing else is going to do. Listen, gun-free zones are born out of emotion, and that ain't working. So they're going to have to come up with some better way of dealing with this.
Well, let's see what more people on the street have to see, and not just me blathering. Go ahead.
Okay. Now, remember, the question is, how do you feel about concealed carry on college campuses? And that's the same question to every person. Here we go.
I think that would be very helpful. For example, yesterday, one guy that took 5 or 6 different hits, he was a vet, and he was having to resort to charging the kid with the gun. I bet if he had a weapon with his tactical skills and so forth, he probably would have brought down the shooter a lot sooner. And I'm sure that there are a lot of opportunities in classrooms. The classes that I've taken, there have always been a vet. They come home from the military, they go back into school, and they have the skills necessary to stop this type of thing. This is exactly what they're trained to stop. And if they were given the freedom to exercise the skills that we as a country train them to do to protect us, gave them the freedom to do that in their daily life, as well as people behind the scenes like me, I'm trained as well, I would be happy to have those people sitting next to me in class. There's a lot of good people out there with skills with firearms. They want to carry. It's a constitutional right to carry. They take that right and that privilege seriously. And those are the things that I think are the blockage. I mean, what we're doing is we're limiting the wrong people by saying a gun-free zone. If they were going to stand there and they were going to enforce the gun-free zone and make sure that nobody had it, maybe that would be one thing. But to just put up a sign and say that is the same as saying, look at us, we're walking targets.
Certainly. That's the reason that shooter chose that place, is everybody was unarmed. They can forbid concealed carry, but concealed carry holders can just ignore that because they don't have the authority. Only, as a matter of fact, our courthouses have that authority.
The Ann Basker Auditorium is a gun-free zone, right? It has a sign on the door says no guns or dangerous weapons allowed. Do you think that is giving a measure of safety to anybody in that building?
None. But then I go ahead and wear my knife in there anyway. And it is, however, yeah, it's a courthouse, you know, by some kind of regulation. Mainly the juries get to have their orientation sessions there. So they consider that part of the courthouse. And boy, you know, considering the things commissioners sometimes do, that could be a very unsafe gun-free zone.
So what is you didn't expect to see Rika, did you?
I did not expect to see Rika.
Well, you know what? She agrees with you on this particular point.
That makes me feel a lot better.
Yes, I know. Rika is Dale's nemesis. She lies in wait every morning on Cammy D, waits for Dale to come on, do whatever he is going to do on there, and then she comes in to disagree with him regardless of what the point is.
The main argument I've got against Rika is she has said to the county commissioners, she calls them honorable chosen ones.
Yes.
We have chosen you to rule us.
We should whip that video out here because
not we have chosen you to lead us, okay, which they don't, but we have chosen you to rule us. Yes. What? And she's taking a very strong stand against people who question government by saying they should not be allowed to speak at all because it might infringe on her ability to speak. What the heck are you saying?
Which is odd because at the end of this clip, she seems to be really questioning the commissioners and saying, you know, considering some of the stuff they do, you know.
Wow.
These two things don't go together. I mean, are we supposed to say, well, even though we think that they're evil and a lot of the stuff that they do is bad, that they're our rulers and we should submit to them unquestionably?
Yes. Now, I don't agree with somebody like what's that city councilor's name? The one that's got the potty mouth.
The potty mouth. I don't know who has the potty mouth.
He's a strong proponent for the sales tax, kind of leading the way on the sales tax.
How many of them are there? Not Roy Lindsay?
Roy Lindsay. Okay. So,
okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I told you that story already. I'm not going to go into that again. Anyway, so I can appreciate the fact that he's got a totally different point of view. I don't agree with it, but he's got a totally different view. What I don't like is when he's trying to shut people up that have something other to say. Okay, the same thing happened with Harry Mackin. Same thing happened with Keith Traherne. I mean, these guys purport to be constitutional scholars, I suppose, or at least they know what the Constitution is, and they purport to be Americans. But then they cannot let people speak, or don't want to let them speak. Our good friend Bill Hunker was invited to come and make a presentation, and they're trying to shut him down, or trying to make him shut up, or trying to negate the vote that they just took. I don't like that kind of stuff. I don't mind. I like the fact that there's two goalposts, but I don't like the idea that one side's trying to tear down the other's goalposts. Don't do that.
Yeah.
That's what Rika does.
I think that when people become politicians, what their political objectives are becomes the important thing, and not it's such an odd thing to me, because the deeper you examine things, like right now the fire protection
standards
ordinance is just an amazing thing, and it just is an illustration of what happens to government, how government becomes bigger, how government becomes corrupt, how they use their corruption to then peddle influence around. And this is just one little part. It's a new part of government they want to do. Well, there's probably tons of existing corruption that no one even thinks about anymore because it's standard operating procedure. But this is how they operate once they get in there, and we're getting a little off the track here.
A little bit, but it is a show about politics. Okay,
right.
What else do the people out on the street have to say?
Well, let's check.
I think it would be smart for teachers to carry guns, or at least have access to a gun in the classroom in case, someone comes in and tries to shoot up the school. I go to an alternative school, so all the teachers that are there, we're all really close. They're like family, so I'd be comfortable with them having guns.
I feel kind of mixed like that because it can go either way. Yeah, it would be nice to have them for one reason, that they'd be able to protect themselves, but in the wrong hands, we're going to have the same problem all over again, if not worse. I think maybe they would be a little safer if those teachers were trained, if they had the weapons available, but they were trained to use them. It would scare me more if they just had the license to carry, but they've had no training with a weapon whatsoever. They could be more harm than good. It makes you feel a lot safer and a little bit more bolder when you have, a weapon available. But if you don't know how to use it, it could, emotionally it can mess you up if you are the cause of somebody else getting killed.
I feel like, as far as the gun thing goes, you can't take the guns away from the people. You just can't do it. You just can't take the gun. It'd be like the president says, we got to do something about the gun thing. But how would he feel if they took all the guns away from all the guys that are protecting him? Is he going to let that happen? You take all your guns, but he's going to let the Secret Service still carry their guns? That doesn't make sense to me. When I was in middle school, I had a gardening class in Tahunga, California, and everybody had rows of gardens. Everybody had rows of tomatoes. No, not tomatoes, of carrots and radishes. If you picked the radish, you got a SWAT. If you picked the carrot, you got a SWAT. Teacher, big old paddles. You used to bend over, grab yourself, tuck yourself, and then teacher just wail on you. Well, he hit this guy one day, and he swung, and he hit the desk, and it ricocheted off the desk and hit this guy in the back. Well, this guy came unglued. He came up off the ground. He wanted to tear that teacher apart. Teacher went behind the desk, pulled out a gun. And that was in the 60s. Pulled out a gun right in the classroom, in the gardening class. So guns have been in the classroom for, a long time. You know what I mean? I don't think it's a bad thing to arm the teachers. I really don't. You got security on campus now. You know what I mean? Teachers are one thing, but students, I don't think so, man. The problem is just today's world, man. It's just changed so much. Everything's just changed. This country's not doing real well. There's no jobs. Young kids right now, they want everything that they see older people have, but they don't know. They don't realize it took 40 years to get it. I got an old hot rod, I drive around. I worked forever to get that hot rod. Kids now, they go, wow, that guy's got a hot rod. I want one, but they don't want to put the 40 years in. They just want it now. They just want it now. And you can't do that, man. You got to put your time in. You got to put your time in. You have to, man. You have to work, man.
Okay, that was bizarre.
Wise words from Mick Fleetwood.
That story was all over the place. I don't like the fact that the teacher pulled out a gun because that's an awful story.
Yeah, I thought, wow, that was some hardcore. I went to school in the 60s. I didn't have any of that going on. That's amazing.
What kind of school has a gardening class and then you get swatted? What?
And then get a gun pulled on you. Wow. And then he's okay with the teachers, but not the students. There's
a case. Well, that seemed to be a case for the opposite to me. But
listen. There was a variety of opinion, but clearly he heard your interview on Bill Maher because you saw him talking about the same thing you guys were talking about with the president.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Okay, so, the lesson we learned from that is when you ask the people for their opinions, you're going to get the people's opinions.
Be ready. Yeah, you're going to get the people's opinion. And you know what? I tried to be as liberal as possible in letting them say whatever they wanted to do.
That's quite an admission from Mike. Okay.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Well, you progressively got there.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, and I just took, when blather in between things, I took out, obviously.
Okay. Well, part of it is, look, we're trying to let people have their say. And occasionally, as has happened on every time we've done interviews with people, they run out of gas. They just don't know what to say next. And all you need to do is just give them a little goose. Now, that doesn't sound right, but you just give them a little bit, and then they'll go on.
Oh, listen, you know what? Last night I was the one thing that got people going is, when they'd run out of gas on the original question, I'd go, so what's the problem? And, I mean, some of these people could have gone on 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Because they have long-winded explanations of why things are the way they are. And
sounds like us.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah,
well, sure. That's real good, Mike. I think that's real good. And Mike took an awful lot of interviews and then tried to compile them into people that would represent a spectrum of opinions. And I think he did a real nice job of editing all that. What I'd like to do is I'd like to take what you've done there, just as you've done it, and also post that so people could watch that without our comments and make your own comments at home. Or take a look and see what different people are saying. Add in your own, to yourself, I guess. And but we're going to try to always bring to you, especially on First Fridays, man in the street, woman in the street, kids in the street, dogs in the street, their opinions about. Oh, I think
that's a great idea.
I think it's rough.
People would actually be interested in that. That video would go viral on Facebook.
It probably would. There are a lot of people who tend toward that direction. Yeah.
Hi, ma'am. Can I talk to your dog? I'd like to ask your dog a few questions, please.
No, he's underage. So, speaking of underage, that one kid that was behind his mom, I suppose, he couldn't look less concerned about anything.
Yeah, he didn't even really want to be on camera. His mom dragged him in, and the other kid got away. There was another kid, but he was able to squirm out of the way. So
yeah, well, okay. So this will eventually affect them as well as it does all of us. So after listening to all of those people and their opinions, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Did you modify your opinion at all? What do you think was the best argument for and against, sir?
Well, I know that, anytime when you're talking about the greater citizenship out there, you're talking about wide degree of variability. And so I understand people who question the maturity of students, younger people, to be able to deal with weapons in a responsible manner. I totally get that. I understand the guy, the first guy. He just thinks, that we all need to get together and hug it out, and which is a great suggestion. I like a hug as much as the next guy, but
okay, we'll arrange that.
Yeah, right. Yes. And I'm scared now. But I think you got to bring a little bit more to it than that, because not everybody is thinking like you are. And that's very, very clear. And walking around, some people dead set against it. Other people, yeah, I'm all for that. I trust people. I trust my fellow man to do the right thing. If they've been certified, they've jumped through the hoops. I think that's enough. Other people say, no way. So 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I don't think anybody's opinion really gets changed that much about it. Some people, when you would say, well, how about, and you give them the Israeli model where they have gone through intensive training, the teachers and staff of a school, and they're ready. I mean, they're anticipating action and that sort of thing. And they trust more in that than they would, willy-nilly, come on, bring your guns to school. I understand that angle. I really do. So I don't know. I think this needs to be talked about a lot more. I think RCC needs to examine what their policies are. The whole community college system needs to, examine their policies and decide what's the best thing going forward. I personally think they're probably not going to change at all. I think they're sort of married to the gun-free zone idea. I think that if you're going to test case this stuff, it's probably going to happen in Idaho or Wyoming or someplace like that. That's a little bit more, conservative thinking, perhaps.
Predictions, I believe that RCC is going to say, bottom line, we have to do this because the state requires it, and that's it. And so we absolve ourselves of all responsibility. The other
they have to do what because the state requires.
They have to have a gun-free zone, or they have to demand. They have to say, well, yes, you can do this because that's state law, but you can't do it because that's state law. And of course, that won't make any sense.
Yes, I did look up. I did look up the ordinance on this, and there was a back and forth about this. They were challenged in, like, I think it was 2009, and then they said, well, we say we answer no contest because we can't, and what the case that was made was that the concealed carry law supersedes their policy on campus. And then so that was tested, and they said, okay, we're not going to buck you on that. And then they said, our policy is no guns on campus. And they just came out and said it, except for certain exceptions. And those exceptions are things that, of course, are never going to be allowed. If you are ex-military and they permit you to do it, if you are law enforcement and they permit you to do it, if you are trained somehow and they permit you to do it. In other words, you need to apply to them, and perhaps they will allow you to do it. Although I suspect that that's a little like it is to get a concealed weapons permit in California. They say, yeah, sure, come on down, put in an application, and we'll get back to you. Because they don't generally issue permits in California unless you're a celebrity or a politician or something.
Well, I put up a pretty complex sign behind me with some wording the other day about when we first did this story, no weapons allowed. And it had some specifics down at the bottom. And one of the specifics I've seen is no mace, no pepper spray. Okay. Now, to make it a little simpler and get off the automatic knee-jerk response to pistols, let's suppose that you have a niece or a granddaughter or the neighborhood girl, whatever, that's going to college now. We're talking about college. And she feels, because there have been some rapes on campus, that she's going to carry pepper spray. Seems reasonable to me. But if the college has a rule against weapons, including pepper spray, then they, in my opinion, bear the responsibility to keep you safe. And if they cannot do so, then they bear the responsibility. Don't tell me that you have responsibility and don't have responsibility.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. It's an odd thing. My son lives in Honolulu, and I thought, well, I realized that, it's kind of a gun controlled city. So I think I'll send him a stun gun. Nope. Illegal. You can't even have a stun gun there. So I don't know about mace or pepper spray. I think you can have that there. But one of the rules, and I think that it was about RCC, I think so, you can't have anything that resembles a weapon. You cannot bring to school a squirt gun. Oh, come on.
No squirt gun.
And you know what? That reminds me of the Pop-Tart case. Are you familiar with the Pop-Tart case?
I am. Tell us the Pop-Tart case.
Yeah, the kid at school, very young kid, 5-6 years old, maybe even less than that, chewed his Pop-Tart in the shape of a gun and was going pew pew, and they
expelled him.
Suspended him. Zero tolerance.
Zero tolerance.
Zero
tolerance rules. Also, that's another subject altogether.
That's ridiculous. Zero tolerance for gun, yes, but he didn't bring a gun. Listen, they've done experiments where they try and deprive little kids of the toys that their genders would normally use. And a little boy will go pick up a stick and go, it's in the genes somehow.
And a little girl will go pick up a stick and sing it to sleep.
Probably so. So it's to try and we're doing so much social engineering here, and I think it's a complete false. You're never going to accomplish this, is what I'm saying. You may take a certain segment of society and wussify it, but you're not going to completely take the boy out of the boy or the girl out of the girl. You're just not going to do it.
Well, one more thing before we say goodnight. That is, it used to be the case in rural America and in colonial America and in the first part of America that people would carry weapons. Okay. And until the British told them, we were not going to allow you to carry weapons. You know why they were doing that. Okay. And then in the Western days, even in the East, some people could carry, but the more citified the East became, the less likely it was that you were going to be able to have any kind of weapons, because we've got hired people that are going to keep you safe. That didn't work out so well either. We used to have a time, it wasn't my high school, but I've heard a number of people say we were allowed to bring our weapons to school, and it wasn't unusual to see a kid show up on the school bus with a rifle over his shoulder. That wasn't the case for me, but for many of you, especially older people, that was something you could do. Now, what's the difference between now and then? Everybody has lost their mind or gotten their mind, or we're a completely psychologically different country. We are in some ways. But one is there isn't much training on that, which a lot of people, well, if you're trained, then maybe that's okay. And is it that now there's more mental illness than there used to be? I'm not sure that one can prove that. There's more crazy people. We can't allow weapons. What's changed that now we suddenly cannot be trusted? Is it the level of training? Is it because everybody's crazy today? What has changed?
Yeah, I don't know. I think parent participation in the lives of their children may be an issue somewhere, because listen, you don't get completely disassociated socially unless you've sort of been trained to be that way, or the fact that you were not very social is ignored, because if your parents are seeing that, hey, the kid's got a little bit of a problem, he's receding into himself, I think it's your responsibility to do something about that and try to help the kid condition himself socially and come out of himself a little bit. These people that are mulling around in their head all day long, they're the ones who cultivate this, anger against the world, and I'm a victim and I'm going to get back at them or something like that.
Well, I have a theory about this also. And my theory is that there comes a time in a village that turns into a town, that turns into a city. They're off, even back in the old days at the beginning, where there just comes a time where you say, well, look, we're going to hire your protection. That's the police force, whether they're corrupt or whatever they are, or sterling citizens, officer friendly. And so now you no longer need your guns, as you did when you were out there in the farming communities and you had to worry about wolves and bad guys. Okay, you no longer need to worry about bad guys. Well, isn't Chicago a wonderful example? But you no longer need to worry about that. You can turn in your guns now, and we're going to roll over them with a steamroller, as they did in Australia. We're going to cut them up into little tiny pieces and sprinkle them on our gardens. Whatever we're going to do with them, you don't need that anymore. You can trust us to keep you safe. Well, what are you going to say to the students of Roseburg?
Well, I mean, I have a little bit of an issue with the analogy there. I think that when government says you need to turn in your guns, so we'll take care of you, you go. Historically, that hasn't turned out so well. So I would listen. I think even in the most populated city, you still have the right to have a gun. You still have the right to protect yourself. And if you're doing it responsibly, there's no more likelihood that your weapon is going to be used improperly than it is in, say, Chicago right now. Chicago, the people who have weapons there acquired them illegally and use them quite liberally. It seems like every weekend you get a report out of there where 50 people, got injured because somebody was randomly firing a gun off or something.
I want everybody to notice that Mike is blaming the liberals again. They're using their guns liberally.
Yes.
Okay.
There are several meanings to that word, just so you know.
All right. So an argument could be made that the bigger the city is, the more likely you are to have nutcases. Okay. That doesn't really hold true in Grand Rapids and Josephine County.
I don't think that's the case. They're just more concentrated. Now, let's say you live on a block with high rises and there's 20,000 people living in a few block area. You're going to see a lot of those people on the street. Okay. But I don't think in any larger concentration than in any other part of the population. In other words, if you got that many of the population together, you'd find just as many crazy people.
Just try changing the venue a little bit. You no longer need to form volunteer fire departments among your neighbors, because now we've got now we have
finally the government is here to take care of us,
and they'll show up and they'll put out your fire. Well, isn't that somewhat the same thing as when we were talking with the sheriff when he used to want to talk with us? Now we come up with facts and figures that disagree with him, and he doesn't want to talk to us anymore. Okay, that's nice, but he would really prefer that you watch out your window and then call him or call his officers, and they'll handle it for you. I understand why because we're trained and we know what to do. You trade some of your independence. I'm a bit more liberal than Mike is. You already know that. But you trade some of your independence for dependence. You say, okay, you take care of us. I kind of understand that. But if we're going to say, okay, as long as I'm on campus, you take care of me, you better take care of them.
Right.